When he deceived me, he was shielding me from the knife. October in Brooklyn is always wrapped in a damp wind, with maple leaves sticking to my suede high heels like pieces of inescapable orange paint. I stood beside Old Tony's hot dog stand, watching Elias Walker tiptoe, prodding the hot dog roller with his plaster-dusted fingers as he haggled with Tony. "Just 50 cents, Tony. You borrowed my wrench to fix the grill last time," he said. His brown curls were plastered to his forehead by the wind, the cuffs of his army green jacket frayed at the edges, and the collar of the Brooklyn Art Factory t-shirt underneath was faded from too many washes. "Elias." I hurried over, clutching my phone. 3 missed calls from my mother glared up at me. "We're going to be late. Martha's opening reception starts in 10 minutes. He turned and held up 2 wrapped hot dogs, his eyes crinkling into crescents. "Relax," Old Tony threw in extra pickles. He stuffed one into my hand, and his plaster-dusted fingertips brushed my sleeve, a vintage piece I'd picked up at a flea market after the Sotheby's auction last week. "Good grief." I fumbled for a wet wipe. "Can't you keep your sculpting tools in check? Last time at Gabriella's gallery opening, you wore resin-stained overalls and the security guards almost dragged you out thinking you were a mover. Did you forget? Art shouldn't be defined by clothes," he said, taking a huge bite of his hot dog, sauce dribbled down his chin. "Besides, when do you ever wear those couture dresses hanging in your closet? Except for photos, I mean. My Doc Martens are way more useful." He kicked the ground, and the soles clicked sharply against the pavement. "They came in handy when I chased that thief last week." I laughed in exasperation, unable to argue. This sculptor from a single-parent home in Brooklyn had a knack for puncturing my refined sensibilities with his down-to-earth ways. I should have known we were from different worlds the day we met 3 years ago, when I was sketching on the street. He'd traded me a rose he'd forged from scrap metal for some of my oil paints. I was the daughter of Manhattan elites, my father a Wall Street lawyer, my mother a curator at the Met. He was a street artist who'd scraped together tuition with part-time jobs before dropping out of art school. The hum of conversation swallowed us as we stepped into Martha's gallery. Crystal chandeliers cast light across the polished marble floor, and I spotted my parents immediately, standing beside Noah, the investment banker my mother called a perfect match. He wore a tailored Armani suit, holding a champagne flute, and chatting effortlessly with the crowd. My mother's gaze locked onto us, her brow furrowing almost imperceptibly. She hurried over, gave Elias a quick once-over, then pulled me aside, her voice low but firm. "Ella, how many times have I told you not to let him dress like this for events like this?" Elias's smile faded a little, but he offered his hand anyway. "Mrs. Walker, long time no see." My mother barely touched his fingertips before turning to Noah, her tone softening instantly. "Noah, come take a look at Ella's work, it's right over there." She ignored Elias completely, pulling me forward. Noah followed, shooting Elias a superior smirk as he passed. I glanced back. Elias stood rooted to the spot, clutching his half-eaten hot dog. Sunlight streamed through the gallery's floor-to-ceiling windows, but he looked strangely alone. My chest tightened and I started to speak, until my mother pushed me in front of my painting, Late Night Subway. "This is Ella's new piece," my mother announced proudly to the group around us. "She captures the warmth of the city with such a tender palette, she's full of potential." "Potential?" A sharp voice cut in. The art critic Jason Cole approached, champagne in hand. His eyes scanned the painting, and he curled his lip in disdain. "With all due respect, Mrs. Walker, this work is gaudily colored and thematically shallow, it's an insult to Brooklyn." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My face burned, and my fingers tightened around my hot dog. My mother's expression soured, but she forced a smile. "Mr. Cole, you're teasing, she's still developing her style." "Development should have limits," Jason scoffed. "Just like those street artists who call scrap metal art, they drag down the entire industry." His gaze flicked pointedly toward the door. Elias had appeared, his hot dog gone, wiping his mouth with a napkin. Before I could react, Elias was at my side, pressing a champagne flute into my hand. He smiled at Jason, but his eyes were cold. "Mr. Cole, that emerging artist you panned last month just won the Pulitzer Prize for Art. I'm curious, what's your criteria? The price tag on the painting, or the label on the artist's suit?" Jason's face darkened. "Who are you to speak to me like that?" "Elias Walker. Someone who works with scrap metal," he emphasized the words. "But at least I know art's core is about touching people. Look at the subway driver in this painting, you can see his exhaustion, but also his hope for tomorrow. Ella painted that. All you see is gaudiness because you haven't ridden the 3 a.m. subway in years. You've forgotten what real life tastes like. How dare you?" Jason trembled with rage. "I'll make sure no gallery in the city shows your work." "I'd like to see you try," Elias raised an eyebrow. "And for the record, you have caviar on your tie clip. Next time you mooch off a gallery reception, wipe your chin." A few people stifled laughs. Jason glared at us and stormed off. My mother turned on Elias, her face livid. "Do you have any idea how influential he is? Ella needs his endorsement for her exhibition." "My paintings don't need endorsements from critics who tear people down to feel important," I blurted out. I froze, surprised by my own boldness. My mother stared, and Noah's mouth fell open. Elias looked at me, a flicker of warmth in his eyes. The reception ended on a sour note. As we walked out, the Hudson River wind cleared the champagne fuzz from my head. The Statue of Liberty glowed faintly in the distance. Elias suddenly pulled a small box from his pocket and pressed it into my hand. "For you." I gasped when I opened it, a tiny plaster sculpture of me sketching on the street, rough around the edges but eerily lifelike. Engraved on the base were the words, "My muse, my courage." "When did you make this?" My voice wavered. "When you pulled that all-nighter painting late-night subway," he scratched the back of his neck, sheepish. "I was with you, so I made it on the side. I was gonna wait till your exhibition opened to give it to you." I stood on tiptoe and kissed him, tasting the lingering hot dog sauce on his lips. This man, who always got plaster dust on my clothes, who burned the coffee when I worked late, somehow always knew how to reach the softest part of me. But I had no idea the real storm was just beginning. A week later, the art factory where Elias worked was slapped with an eviction notice. Developers planned to tear down the old warehouse and build luxury condos. I was touching up a painting in my studio when Elias called, his voice worn thin. "Ella, can you come to the studio tonight? Please." When I reached the old factory in southern Brooklyn, my stomach dropped. The door was pried open, sculptures scattered across the floor, and "Get Out" scrawled on the wall in red paint. The faucet was left running, cooling water everywhere. Several of Elias's prized pieces were warped and waterlogged. He knelt on the floor, gently wiping a metal sculpture, a deep gash on his hand oozing blood into the muck. "Did the developers do this?" I dropped to my knees beside him, grabbing a napkin to press against his wound. He looked up, red-rimmed eyes dark with exhaustion. "They offered me a hush money payout to lead the other artists in agreeing to the demolition." He nodded at an envelope in the corner. 10 grand inside. "You didn't take it." "Only an idiot would take it," he laughed bitterly. "This place holds the work of over 20 artists. I can't let that get destroyed." He stood, walking to the window to watch the crowd gathering outside. "The long-time residents are with us, but the new yuppies only care about property values." I followed his gaze. A group of well-dressed people held support development signs, arguing with residents. One face looked familiar, Noah's father, a partner in the development firm. A cold dread settled in my chest. In the days that followed, Elias vanished into his fight. He organized protests during the day, and washed dishes at a diner at night to raise money for legal fees, sleeping only 3 or 4 hours a night. I tried to help, but he always brushed me off. "Focus on your exhibition. I've got this." He started pulling away, ignoring my calls, skipping visits to my studio. When we passed each other on the street, He'd mumble a quick hello and rush off, more cuts and bruises on his hands every time. My mother called constantly, each conversation circling back to one thing: break up with him. Noah's father says he'll secure your exhibition funding, and give Elias a severance package, if you just end it, she tempted. Your art career's just starting. Don't let him ruin it. I opened my mouth to argue when my phone pinged. A text from Noah, with a photo attached. It showed Elias hugging a blonde woman outside the developer's office. Noah's message came next: Ella, stop being naive. He caved to reality weeks ago. Now he's cutting deals with the developers. A cold hand clamped around my heart. I stared at the photo, replaying Elias's recent behavior, his distance, his secretive calls, his refusal to explain. Panic surged through me. I grabbed my jacket and ran to the developer's office. He was walking out as I arrived, a manila folder in his hand. He froze when he saw me, shoving the folder behind his back. Ella? What are you doing here? What are you doing? My voice shook as I pointed at his hand. What were you talking to the developers about? And who is she? I held up my phone, showing him the photo. He frowned at the photo. That's a pro bono lawyer. We're gathering evidence of the developers' illegal tactics. He started to explain, then stopped, sighing heavily. Just drop it. Your parents were right. We're from different worlds. Different worlds. I couldn't believe it. So you lied to me. You made a deal with the developers. What happened to art shouldn't be sold to the highest bidder. I didn't make a deal. He raised his voice, then lowered it, defeated. I don't want to drag you down. Your family already hates me. I can't let you lose your exhibition because of me. So you lied to me instead. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Elias, you never trusted me. You treat me like some fragile princess who needs protecting, but I'm your partner. I'm tired of defending you to my parents. I'm tired of your secrets. My mother called again. I hit ignore and turned off my phone. Elias looked at me, his eyes raw with pain. Ella, don't do this. We're done. I turned and ran, unable to meet his eyes. I heard him calling my name, but I kept running, until my tears blurred the streetlights. A downpour hit that night. I locked myself in my studio, staring at the plaster rose Elias had given me, and cried until dawn. When I woke up, my mother told me she'd lined up a new gallery and secured full funding, on one condition: you never speak to Elias again. I said nothing. I just kept preparing for the exhibition. I didn't see Elias for a month. Noah stopped by my studio occasionally, pretending to check in. Every time he dropped an update about Elias, he took the developer's money. Leaving Brooklyn soon. He's been spending a lot of time with that female lawyer. I kept my face blank, but every word felt like a knife in my chest. Then, a week before the opening, I went to the gallery to finalize the installation, and the curator dropped the bombshell: the exhibition's cancelled. Why? I grabbed his arm, desperate. Your mother requested it, he sighed. She said you're not in the right headspace. And someone accused you of plagiarism. I stumbled out of the gallery, numb. My phone rang. Elias's mother. Ella, hurry to the community square. Elias, the line was chaos, shouting, sirens wailing. I ran, my shoes slipping on the wet pavement. A crowd had gathered around an ambulance. Elias lay on a stretcher, a bandage wrapped around his head, his hands still bleeding. His mother sobbed as she told me, to save the art factory, he'd pawned his most precious sculpture, Brooklyn's backbone, to pay for a lawyer. Today at the protest, hired thugs had jumped him. He made me promise not to tell you, she said, pressing an envelope into my hand. Said he didn't want to mess up your exhibition. I burst into tears when I opened it. Inside were documents, proof of the developer's illegal threats, the uncropped version of Noah's evidence, a security cam shot showing the lawyer hugging Elias in thanks, and a grant approval letter from a public welfare art foundation, made out to me, with the donor listed as anonymous. At the bottom was a crumpled note, his handwriting messy but warm: "Ella, your art was never shallow. It's the light of Brooklyn. I didn't cave. I didn't betray you. When I'm better, I'll make you another rose." The next day, I stood in the community square with Elias's evidence clutched in my hand, waiting for the Save Our Art Space rally. When Elias appeared, leaning on a crutch, the crowd cheered. He wore a hospital gown, his face pale, but his eyes were steady. "I'm Elias Walker, a sculptor from Brooklyn," he said into the microphone, his voice hoarse. "People call me a street artist like it's an insult. They say I took the developer's money and sold out. Today, I'm here to tell the truth." He held up the threat recordings, the pawn shop receipt, Noah's doctored photo. "I lied to Ella not because I didn't trust her, but because I was ashamed. Ashamed I might not be good enough for her, ashamed her family was right about us. Ella," he looked at me, tears in his eyes, "I'm sorry I hurt you. Your art is the warmest I've ever seen. It deserves to be seen by the world." Noah and his father stood in the crowd, their faces ashen. Noah tried to push forward, but Elias's friends blocked him. "We have proof you forged evidence, framed Ella for plagiarism, and hired thugs to attack Elias," the pro bono lawyer said, holding up more papers. "The police are on their way." I pushed through the crowd and took his hand. It was cold but strong. "I'm not here to apologize," I said into the nearest microphone, looking at my parents and Noah. "I'm here to say Elias is my love, and my art's inspiration. I didn't plagiarize. Every brushstroke is ours, made with passion, made with hope." My mother stared at me, conflicted. My father squeezed her shoulder, then stepped forward and shook Elias's other hand. "Mr. Walker, I was wrong, about you, about everything. We'll get Ella's exhibition back on track. And we'll use every resource we have to save this art factory." Sunlight broke through the clouds, warming us. Noah and his father slunk away, humiliated. The developer's evidence went to the police, the art factory was added to Brooklyn's historic art spaces list, and my parents pulled strings to restart my exhibition. On opening night, Elias sat in a wheelchair beside me, in front of late-night Subway. A crowd gathered around the painting. "It feels like home," someone said. "This is Brooklyn's soul." Jason Cole approached, his head bowed. "Ms. Walker, I was wrong. Your work has real power." I smiled and shook my head, turning to Elias. He held out a tiny plaster sculpture, us, standing on the art factory roof, the Brooklyn skyline behind us. Engraved on the base, "Together, we are each other's light." After the exhibition, we walked along the Hudson. Elias moved slowly, his injuries still healing. "No more secrets," I said, linking my arm through his. "No more breaking up," he said, scratching his neck. The Statue of Liberty glowed in the distance, maple leaves swirling around our feet. I knew our story wasn't over, there would be more fights, more challenges. But as long as we stood together, none of it mattered. Not class differences, not critics, not threats. Elias's plaster and my oil paint, different, even clashing. But in Brooklyn, on this soil, we made something warm, something real. Because the best love isn't about being perfectly matched. It's about showing up. Bickering, hiding, fighting, all of it was just noise. Underneath, we'd already made each other our whole world. That night, in my studio, Elias picked up a block of fresh plaster. His hand still shook, and the rose he made was lopsided, petals uneven. But it was the most precious thing I'd ever owned. I set it on my easel, watching it glow under the lamplight. I finally understood, our bickering couple act was just a mask. A way to hide how much we cared, how much we feared losing each other. When no one was looking, we'd built walls around each other, walls of protection, walls of love. Later, we founded the Brooklyn Young Artists Fund to help kids like us, talented, broke, unafraid to be different. Elias's sculptures gained international acclaim, my paintings hung in galleries across Europe. My parents visited our studio often. My mother teased Elias about still getting plaster on her good tablecloths. My father debated sculpture materials with him over coffee. One sunny Saturday afternoon, I was sketching at my easel while Elias polished a metal sculpture nearby. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting his shadow across my canvas. "Elias, you're blocking my light," I laughed. He turned, holding a piece of buffed metal, that familiar glint in his eye. "Then I'll be your light." I dipped my brush in warm yellow paint and traced his shadow onto the canvas. This time, my painting held more than Brooklyn's warmth, it held our light. All the fights, the lies, the pain, they'd become the foundation of our love. A bond forged in oil paint and plaster, unbreakable forever. I dipped my brush in warm yellow paint and traced his shadow onto the canvas. This time, my painting held not just the warmth of Brooklyn, but also our own unquenchable light. All the past conflicts, misunderstandings, and pains had become the most precious backdrop of our love, making this bond forged by oil paint and plaster even stronger and warmer.